Hello, and welcome back to the Ground and Root podcast, where we are exploring the world of holistic strategies to enhance healing and help you stay cancer free. I'm your host and holistic cancer dietitian, Dion Detrez. And today we're going to dive into the topic of community, why this is one of our wellness pillars at Ground and Root, why we believe fully that this needs to be part of a healing plan. In episode 3, I shared more about what our 4 wellness pillars are, how community support is an important part of this healing formula. So if you haven't listened to that, you can certainly go back and learn more there. But to help us talk about community and also for you to hear a story of somebody moving through a cancer journey using many different holistic strategies, I am so excited to have Christine on our call today. Christine also happens to be one of our coaches inside the Healing Accelerator. So you're going to learn a little bit more about that as well. But before we dive into the accelerator, into the community piece, I first just want to welcome Christine and ask if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about you and your healing journey and what brought you to our world at Ground and Root.
Thanks, Dion. I would love to. So I'll just dive right in. I was diagnosed in the spring of 2022 with triple negative breast cancer. I was shocked. And I immediately began treatment as soon as I was diagnosed. So I started 20 weeks of weekly chemotherapy. I had surgery after that. And then I began 6 weeks of daily radiation. Everything ended in spring of 2023. I never questioned if there were any other options. I was a mother, or I am a mother of
Mm-hmm.
3 boys. I've been married for 25 years. My sisters and I both we all lost our parents to cancer. So I just said, I will do whatever you say.
Mm-hmm.
So the treatment it worked. I was cancer free. It was so hard, it was grueling, and I was happy to be cancer free, but I was also devastated physically and emotionally by the treatment.
It was
Um,
really like a full year, right? Between the different therapies that you did.
yes, and I even
Yeah.
continued after that with a lot of physical therapy
Mm.
to heal. So it
Yeah,
was a
that's a
full.
long time, a whole year. And you came into it, I mean, knowing because I know some of your background, I can say that, but you came into it like a pretty healthy and strong
Yes.
person, right? And it was still quite a toll on your
I
body.
have been trying to live and eat very organically, chemical free for 15 years.
Mm.
I was buying all organic foods and trying my best to live that way.
Yeah.
So
So,
I was shocked.
yeah, I was going to say, so even more of a shock when you felt like you were already doing so many things right, right? Like, why would this
Yes.
happen when you're doing all the things right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think
Yeah.
a lot of people can relate to that. Perhaps some of our listeners, but I feel like many of the women I meet, they're in some ways, it's maybe even a scarier position because you feel like, gosh, what else could I do to help
Yeah.
myself stay cancer free if I was already doing A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? All these things.
It was difficult because you have that thought, what did I do wrong? What did I
Mm,
do wrong? Why?
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's hard. Okay, so you finished. So a year later, you
Yes,
got
and
through
here I
treatment. There's no
am.
cancer seen in your body, which is fabulous. But now
Yes,
you're like entering this world of recovery, which is sometimes for some people it's even harder than treatment sometimes,
yeah,
right? And you're not always given a lot of support or direction around what do I do now to help
yeah.
myself get back to a healthy place. So tell us about that period for you. What did you do there?
So that was it. It was like I was surrounded by, well, I had all the support of doctors and nurse practitioners. They were there for everything. And then I had a family and friends and my church community, and they were all surrounding me every week, meals and texts and phone calls,
Mm.
gifts. stopping by, driving me. And then it felt like, honestly, it felt like I rang that bell at my last
Mhm.
treatment. And then I looked around and everybody was gone. Even the
Mhm.
doctors, they had no answers for the symptoms. And like my body, I said, I felt devastated. I didn't
Yeah.
recognize myself. I didn't recognize my body. And fortunately, I had joined your membership at the end of my chemotherapy.
Mhm.
So I did have some tools and I had some resources. And I realized too, there is a certain powerlessness to
Mm.
a surrender to the treatment. And you say, okay, I'm going to do this. And you have to show up. And everything that happens, all the side effects that come, you just go with it. And
Mhm.
you say, okay, someday I'm going to feel better. I won't always feel this nauseous. I won't always look this terrible, feel this terrible.
Mhm.
But then there's sort of, you're by yourself and you're like, how am I going to do this?
Mm.
So I thought, okay, I was powerless during the treatment, but I'm not for my healing. I have tools, I have resources, I know what to do. And so I started to join all of the calls that you had on your
Mm.
membership, for nutrition and energy, all of it. And I worked the protocols that you and I did on our one-on-one sessions. I joined, there was a holistic healing cancer center in about an hour from my home. So I
Mhm.
joined all of their support groups and I tried to go for their holistic therapies. I started acupuncture weekly. I walked, I prayed, I journaled. I did as much as I could. And I finally started to have a little bit of grace and gratitude for my body
Mm.
and what it had been through. I just kind of dove in because I said, I really want to heal. And cancer came to show me something, to teach me something. And I
Mhm.
want to know what that was. And I want to know what I need to do differently to
Mhm.
never go through this again. And so
Yeah.
that's what I did. I met women too. When you meet them going 6 weeks every day for radiation, I met women and
Mhm.
I called them. And I finally started to share in some of these support groups and say, I feel like this. And my
Mm.
doctor doesn't know what I'm talking about. And they're like, oh, yeah. Women said that to me all the time. Oh, yeah, that's normal. They all
Mm.
validated how I was feeling. And I finally felt, okay, okay, I can do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. How important for you in your personal journey, because I know you can also speak to this as just holding space for others, but for your journey, how important was it just to have that validation, like to not feel maybe that you were so alone in how you were feeling or not knowing if it was okay or not, or who to ask or where to go, right?
It was crucial. It was crucial because I felt crazy when I was going to the oncologist and saying, this is happening. And then they would say, oh, we've never heard that side effect before. And I thought
Mm.
that I was just being a hypochondriac or something. And
Mm.
then I kept feeling like I should be better than I was. I didn't really, like, I never wanted to be a victim and I never wanted to complain. And I just was like, okay. I'm going to get through this and I'm going to be tough. And I hated when people called me a warrior during treatment because I said, I'm
Mm.
just showing up. But the warrior part comes after when you're doing this
Mhm.
healing and you can't heal alone.
Right.
And in the beginning, I was turning to my family for help. And they just were like, we don't know. We don't
Yeah.
know what to do, how to help you. So I really needed other people who have walked this walk, which is the
Yeah.
loneliest journey ever. But then you see people who've done it and you're like, oh, okay. And even women that I had who were really my good friends now, they were a couple years ahead of me
Mm.
in the healing. And they said, no, it takes longer. It takes longer. Be patient.
Yeah.
They kept me going. They gave me hope. They gave me resources. It was crucial.
Yeah.
I couldn't have done it.
It's almost like having a mentor, like
Yes.
somebody to mentor you through this journey. that
That's
they've been there. They know, like, they can help with expectations. They can help with, like you said, resources and just knowing what is more common than not.
yeah,
Yeah, I feel when you think about, I mean, when I think about community, I feel like in general, as human beings, we do tend to thrive in community. Like even those of us who prefer to be alone or maybe a bit introverted, just the human condition was meant to be with other people, even if it's a small group of other people, but we weren't really meant to do life alone, and certainly not the hard things. And there are many hard things that we have to go through throughout life, but cancer is probably one of the hardest. And to go through that without community can be, I believe, at least in what I've seen doing this work now for as long as I have, is I actually think it can work against the healing process. You know, if you
absolutely.
really feel isolated and like you don't have anybody, or I shouldn't say not anybody to lean on, because your family, of course, is going to show up and do what they can for you. Your friend network, your church community, but it's not quite the same as having people who actually understand because they've been in your shoes, right? Is that how you
Mhm.
felt as well?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. I know that we are made, you say all the time, our tribe. And
Right.
I really think we're made for relationship and for people to hold that space for us. We really need that and we need to give it too.
Yeah.
And I think that
Mm,
really fills us up. And I couldn't have done it. I could not have done it without these women who were my mentors.
yeah.
And they still are. They still
I love
are.
that.
They, when we get together for coffee and we're complaining about our lives, we say, "What? Wait." They remind me, "Wait, look how lucky we are. How blessed are we to be here today?
Yeah.
Look what we
Oh,
walked through. Look how strong we are." I couldn't
it's
be who I am.
empowering.
It's so empowering. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
And to speak to the point where you just said, so to obviously to receive that support is critical when you're moving, particularly when you're in the thick of it and you're just overwhelmed with everything that's you're dealing
Mhm.
with. But then there is that point, which might be a bit different for everybody, but that point in your journey where then it can be just as important to start giving support to
Yeah.
others. And I know that was something that we spoke about when you were still a member of our community, about creating a monthly call where you could give that support to others and create, we call it our community connection call, because it's really about, yes, there's support happening, but I think it's more about the connection of just feeling, again, you're not alone and with people who get it. So speak a little bit about that transition. Not that you're, I mean, I'm sure you're still receiving support too, but that transition to actually starting to give support. What was that like for you?
I think it's exactly what I said. It fills me up and it makes me feel like, okay, I walked this walk and it can be turned into something good
Mm,
because I can share my lessons or the tools I used, or I can just simply listen, or I can say, yes, I get it. I
mhm.
understand. It does fill you up and it makes me feel, I don't know, I'm just so grateful that I can hold space for people, that I can say it it will get better. Just like people said to me, it
Yeah.
will get better. And you could try this and you can, I don't know. But it was pretty cool actually, just
Yeah.
switching from, and I don't know, there were some support groups that
Mhm.
would kind of not, how do I say, they were sometimes went more negative, and
Mm,
it wasn't a good place for me to go. So I feel like we created that, or you created that, and I just host it.
yeah.
So
The
I'm
most
more
important role is the
right.
hostess.
Yes.
Okay,
But
I want to take a minute to speak to that because I actually think that is a really important piece, because I know there are lots of support groups out there. And typically, when you're moving through a cancer journey, your hospital probably even offers some of these support groups. And hopefully, you're made aware of what's available so that you can not feel so alone. But I
Mhm.
want to speak to the fact that not all support groups are created the same. And even though there's a purpose there that is beneficial to can be beneficial to everyone, I have found that it's not enough to just surround yourself with people who also understand what you're going through, but to people who also believe that they can heal, for starters, that have hope, that have empowerment, that know that there's a lot they can do to enhance their recovery, right? That are interested in using holistic strategies and tools to help themselves heal. That is a very different vibe, right? Like a very different environment than just showing up and talking about whatever happened that week, which I don't want to say there isn't value in that, because of course there is. And I also don't want to make it sound that our calls are never hard, right? There are hard things that people go through when you go through a journey like this. And it is important to have a space where you can talk about the negative stuff and the stuff that you're scared of and the stuff that you're worried about. And it's not right. Like, I think this, we will talk about this a lot more as we move through this podcast, because I think there's some nuance between the idea of holding higher emotions that can help us heal. So, holding on to things like hope and empowerment and powerfulness and love and all these things. But there's also the reality that you're not always going to feel that way. And that's normal and that's okay. But how do we use those opportunities when things get hard, when we're scared, when we're angry, when we're like feeling the negative? Can we land in a container in a support group that allows us to have these feelings and gives us enough resources to move into a different emotion so that we don't stay in this place of darkness, right? And so I think it's very important that you just finding support is first, but like finding the right support is almost
Mm-hmm.
more important. Would you agree with that, Christine?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
I joined post-treatment support group, breast cancer support group, and a bunch of those. And there were a few that it was a venting session of
Mm,
every negative thing. And I didn't walk away feeling like I had gained anything but maybe a little more stress. So
yeah.
I feel like it is very important for our feelings to be validated.
Sure.
But I guess in the same time, it's nice to have somebody say, how about this? Have you thought of it like this? Or,
Mm,
and I feel like our community, we focus so much on healing
yeah.
rather than I'm sick or
Yeah.
I'm have cancer. It's more like
Mm,
let's always focus on the healing because, like
mhm.
you said, we do believe that it's always possible.
And our bodies react to what we're thinking, to what our
Yes.
mind believes, to what our mind focuses on. And again, it's that balancing act of having real feelings and validating the hard stuff, that we're not trying to dismiss that.
Mhm.
And can we choose, can we help redirect into a more empowering place? So, this is why, as I was putting together our group coaching program, because I started with just one on one calls and then we moved into group coaching, it was really important for me to include a community aspect to this, where we're not just showing up on the calls and like checking in with each other, but where there's real community so you can feel held.
Right.
That you feel like, again, not only are you not going through it alone, but you also have people who can buoy you when your spirits are low, right? Who you can help others when they're having a hard time, where there's an exchange of
Mhm.
support and receiving. And we're so lucky to have Christine host these calls for us every month. So, Christine, tell us a little bit more just about being the host of these calls. What are they like and how are they maybe a little different? Because I know it's even the way you structure them is maybe a little bit different than like a standard support group, but give us a little
Mhm.
taste of what these calls are like.
So something that's really cool is so it's all virtual and we have people from all over the world.
Yeah, I know it's
We come together on this call once a month and it's a little different because all of your calls are recorded, but this one
mhm,
is not.
right.
And it seems like we quite often have a group where we've gotten to know each other well, and it's nice to have a friend who's across the world. But we focus on a lot of what you teach. We talk a lot about what Dion's plan for me, and we talk about the energy calls, the healing calls, and Caslin's prevention calls. And we will quite often pull in some of those tools and we'll say, okay,
Mm,
there's so many things we could be working on. I do see like we use a lot of what you guys recommend and
mhm,
how we do validate each other in what might be going on, but at the same time, we don't stay in that space. We're
mhm,
always trying to uplift,
mm.
and quite often we end up laughing on the call too. So it's a really warm space to come.
I love that. That's perfect. It's perfect.
Um,
Because I think there's also this idea that even in the midst of something, let's just say the hardest thing maybe that you've ever had to go through in your life, you can find a space where you would still laugh and find like levity and hope and inspiration, even amongst others who are doing something just as hard as you. I think
right.
that's actually really special. I love that part of our group.
Mhm.
I feel like I couldn't offer one without the other. That is a very important piece. And in addition to the monthly calls, we also have just like a private chatting space too, where I know that you often will also check in with each other and ask questions or offer support or some inspiration. Or I love that too. So even in between, there's a lot of connection happening.
Yes, if someone's having a scan, we will check in and say, how'd your scan go? And or your test, or try to support each other thereafter. So that's nice to be able to check
Mhm.
on each other and offer that support.
Yeah. So I
Mm.
think the take home message for our listeners is whether you choose to be in our container or not, the most important thing is that you do surround yourself with a community of people who really understand A, what you're going through. Ideally, are doing it either themselves or maybe, like you mentioned, Christine, are a couple years forward so that you can really focus on the
Yeah.
forward. Oh, this is what's possible instead of getting so in the moment of just, God, this is so hard. It's like they're visually showing you what's to come, which can be very encouraging, and who are really there to lift you up and to help you focus on the healing, on the what's possible. I think that piece is so important to me. So it's been now, Christine, for you. So you finished treatment in spring of 23. So we've 2 years since treatment finished, right? 3 years, I guess, since you were diagnosed. Having a bit more perspective, maybe being a bit more removed from it. So now you're in the position those other mentors were for you, right? When you were going through
Yes.
it. Is there anything like if there's a listener right now who's just in it? And maybe they're also dealing with triple negative breast cancer. Like they're in a very similar treatment regimen that you had to go through. And so they really understand what would you like to tell them at this point in the game?
That your journey is your own. Don't get on Google. Don't listen to any of the negativity. It really is, like we say, our thoughts, our words. It's all possible. I will say I feel better now than before cancer. I have
Mm,
learned how to take care of myself. I've learned how to rest. So sometimes cancer can come to teach us something.
mhm,
Sometimes it came to wake me up. And I would say, keep going and find your people, find people who've walked it before you and listen to them if they're
mm.
positive. You
Right.
know, but it really is so important to have people and have, especially people who have done what you're going through, to let you know you're going to make it and it will be okay.
Yeah. Oh, I love
Mhm.
that. Thank you, Christine. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And of course, for all that you do inside the accelerator, we all appreciate you.
It's
So
good.
thank you. Thank you for
Thank
that.
you. Okay.
And this was our third of 3 episodes that we did where you got a chance to meet our coaches to hear more about what they do inside of Ground and Root, but then also just the work that they're doing and why these pieces are part of our wellness pillars, why they're so important. So I hope that was helpful just to give you a really nice foundation of this is what we're about at Ground and Root. This is what you're going to learn more about if you continue on this journey with us, which I really hope you will. If you haven't already, please subscribe so that you'll be the first to know when new episodes are released every week. Share with your friends and family if you think it will benefit them. And in our next two episodes, we're actually filming this in the middle of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So that wasn't necessarily planned with Christine's share today, but it worked out that way. And our next two episodes, I'm actually going to dive deeper into breast cancer. We're going to talk more about the root causes beyond like kind of what's talked about in the mainstream. We're going to go deeper into the why rates are increasing, especially in younger people. And most importantly, we're going to talk more about the how do we prevent it using, again, this like holistically minded framework. How do we get to a place where we really reduce our risks, whether you've gone through it before and you're wanting to stay cancer free, or perhaps it runs in your family and you want to do what you can to lower your risk. That's what we're going to be talking about next. So I hope you will tune in for that. Thank you again, Christine, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye, everyone.